Welcome to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with host Lane Nordlund.
Alrighty, friends, welcome back to more conversations here on the Cattleman's Call podcast. Lane Nordlund here, happy to be with you. I almost didn't make this recording of the podcast. My schedule on my calendar, well, I don't think I accepted the calendar invite, and I was going to go fix fence, but luckily our guest was proactive and did some follow-up with the NCBA team to make sure that the host is going to be here for our conversation. Our guest today is Sierra Jepsen, and she is joining us here today, not too far actually from me, Livingston, Montana. It's a mountain range or two away. But we're going to be talking about a little bit about her background and also her career as a butcher, and along with some butcher trainings that she is providing folks out in the countryside. But Sierra, it's a beautiful start to fall. We just went from summer to fall. I guess, how are things down there in the Paradise Valley of Montana?
It certainly feels like it's about to switch over to fall. I think this is our last week of 80-degree weather, and you can kind of look at the forecast, and every single day it dips from 80 to 70 to 60. So I think Montana is ready for fall, whether or not we are.
Well, I am certainly ready for it. I enjoyed the nearly 2 inches of precipitation we got this past weekend at the end of September, kind of helping the ground out a little bit for next year. But, obviously, as I mentioned, you're a butcher, you're a young person in agriculture. Well, let's just talk about yourself, because you're not originally from Livingston, Montana. I believe you're from Iowa. I want to say Iowa. I caught myself. That's a Midwest fighting there, but you're originally from Amanda, Ohio. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. And we'll claim all those Midwestern states. That's just Midwestern agriculture. Yeah, so I grew up on a beef cattle operation in Ohio. We ran the whole Midwestern gamut. So corn, wheat, soybean, hay, straw, cattle, all of it. And so my family still farms back in Ohio. My dad farms full time. My sister farms with him. And my mom, she actually teaches at Ohio State as an agricultural safety specialist. So my roots run deep in agriculture. I attended the Ohio State University, majoring in ag business and minoring in animal science. I never wanted to be a vet. I find as a butcher, I have a much higher success rate of keeping the critters dead rather than trying to keep them alive. So, and yeah, I loved the beef cattle industry, growing up, and I knew that I wanted to be connected with the beef cattle industry in some way. But different than my sister, who, wants to be out with the cattle every single day. I knew that maybe that wasn't my calling. I had a great internship opportunity up here in Montana, ranching cattle. I worked with Certified Angus Beef for an internship through college and liked working with the consumers. But there just seemed like there had to be some way to combine both what the livestock producers were doing on, out on the farm, on the range every single day, with what the producer or the consumer was receiving on their plates, and the questions that they had about nutrition and how to cook, beef products. And so I found meat science my senior year of college, and I couldn't get into the beef production class that I wanted to because I wasn't an animal science major, and it filled up. And so I found that there was this meat science class. I was like, well, meat, beef, that's about the same, right? And by the second day of that class, I was hooked on meat science. I added it as a second minor. I decided I was going to take a fifth year to only take meat science classes. I joined the meats judging team. I started working in the meat lab, and it just snowballed from there. I wanted to go to grad school for meat science, and instead I got the opportunity to head west and coach meat judging teams at the University of Wyoming for 4 years. And then from there, again, COVID hit. I had this, crazy, wild-haired idea that I was going to open my own meat cutting school. And so it was time to go to grad school so I could pursue that. And I'd stayed connected with Dr. Phil Bass, who had been the previous meat scientist at Certified Angus Beef. And he had transitioned to the University of Idaho. And so I knew, well, then that's where I'm going to do my master's degree. And I'm going to learn every single scientific name of every muscle that exists in a beef carcass. I'm going to become a better butcher myself. And then I'm going to help educate more butchers and try to fix the labor issue that we have, so that we can help out some of these small meat processing facilities in local communities. And so that's kind of what brought me then to, I live in Livingston now, but I own a traveling butcher school. And so truly the whole premise is that I can travel in that some ways that a small local butcher shop can't, so that we can help educate those butchers, we can keep their shops alive, and we can help out the local livestock producer.
So I guess what does that look like as a traveling educator, as a butcher? What does your rig look like? Are you taking stuff with you, or are you coming into people's shops, or I guess paint a picture for us there.
Sure thing. So the business is called Butcher Solutions LLC. Feel free to check it out on the internet or Instagram, whatever you'd like. So Butcher Solutions, and it is just me that travels. Right now, I'm kind of a bootstrap entrepreneur, in that it's unique that I don't need brick and mortar, to bring butchers in to educate them, because that's an unnecessary expense that somebody from Texas or Kansas or Pennsylvania, they don't have the money or the funds or the time to send their butchers out for a lengthy training, whether that's a 4-year degree like I have in meat science, then a master's degree, even an apprenticeship program. There's just not too many butcher education programs out there anymore. So I travel, whether that's for a 1-day program, several days, a full week. I've even had some folks reach out that are building meat processing facilities that are getting grants right now, saying that, great, we're going to write into our grant that we need some butcher training once we get this facility built. And then could you come and help train our butchers for a month or 2 months, whatever it might be. And so by Sierra Jepsen taking Butcher Solutions to the actual processor, working in their facility with their unique setup that has all of its own fun quirks, working up their own carcasses, there's no loss of production time for them. And then there's no added cost for hotel rooms and for travel to get their people somewhere. And then they're not down a man, because I can come in and train one butcher, I can train 20 butchers, whatever it might be. And and we can discuss the whole gamut of health and safety of their employees, of safety of the work environment, of how can we go faster, how can we cut something in a different way, because if academia is great and we love putting on workshops in academia and bringing folks in and showing off our shiny meat labs, or maybe our ancient meat labs, depending which university you work with, and they're all great and wonderful. But we work in a bubble in academia, and everything is as seamless as it can be. And in the industry, it doesn't work that way. And so if folks are working with a brand new facility that they just got a grant for, and they're trying to figure out the most efficient way to use that new facility, or if they're working with something that was built in the 40s or later or earlier, those facilities might have their own ancient quirks that they're like, it's great to go somewhere and get trained there, but when we come home, we can't implement those practices. So by Sierra Jepsen and Butcher Solutions traveling, I get to help them out at their own facility, cut their own carcasses, and then they're making money on the day that they're actually learning material too.
So really, it's almost an audit, almost in a way, with some of these facilities, maybe looking for some ways that they can improve how they're cutting meat, how they're handling it. And audit can be a bad word, I guess, sometimes to use, but really, even though they're taking the course, it's really about becoming more efficient, but also more profitable in getting more beeves out, or other. We're talking beef today, but hogs, lambs, whatever that might be, out the door.
Yeah, and Audit. Yeah. I mean, whether or not that has a negative connotation to it, but it really is just a self-reflection on how can we be a better butcher and a better steward to the livestock producers that we serve in our communities. So I live in Livingston, Montana now, but I still help out from afar with my family's freezer beef business. And so my dad and my sister raise the cattle, and then it's pretty easy for me to be the one who calls the butchers to line up the slots, to work with our local customers. And they have a lot of questions about, okay, well, if we go to this meat processor, how are they going to cut and wrap my meat? And I went to this guy up the road last year, and their meat products just look a little bit different than this guy's meat products. And that's true. Each butcher has their own way of doing something, and whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, there are many different ways that our butchers can cut meat products, and many different ways that they can serve customers. And so what we as butchers have to ask ourselves is who is our customer, and how can we turn out the highest quality meat product to them? And the reason I really wanted to start this business was because of COVID, and livestock producers really put it on their shoulders to solve some of those labor issues that came out of COVID. And God bless them. They found that, there was USDA money available to build more meat processing facilities or to have equipment, whatever it might be. And those livestock producers said, I'm having a hard time finding a place to have my cattle marketed. And I have people that really want beef and who are concerned about supply chain of beef. And so if I went in with a couple of my other, cattle raising buddies, and we built a meat processing facility, then wouldn't we be better off, because we could have a continuous place to process them, and our local community would have a constant stream of meat, and that would be great. And so they did it. They got them funded and they built those facilities. But now those guys who run cattle every day, they're like, well, crap, now I need to find somebody to run this meat processing facility, and I need to find a way to actually make this work. And they still want to be out raising cattle and riding pastures and fixing fence and doing all the fun cowboy stuff. They don't want to be the butcher. They want to find somebody to be the butcher, and they still want to be the cowboy, and that's great, because there's people like me who want to be the butcher. And so my goal is to really help those new facilities that just started to find their feet. And it's great that they got up and running, and great that they're finding that need and filling it, but I want to make sure that they succeed. And so there aren't a lot of people that want to work on cold, wet concrete every day. And so we need to find those folks in the community, and truly, build some better butchers as well, and make sure that those communities have meat products that they trust, and that they recognize too.
Well, and that's one thing too. Obviously, labor is always going to be a challenge for anybody, whether it's in production agriculture, on the processing end of things. But as you go and work and educate these butcher shops, and whether it's a brand new owner or someone that's been in the business for decades, or maybe they have new equipment, as you mentioned, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see when you're visiting these different operations day in and day out?
One of them is incorporating some of the innovative cuts that the beef community has come out with. So back in the 2000s was when NCBA funded a lot of research to take the chuck primal and innovatively cut apart some of those individual muscles. And we found the flat iron steak. We found the Denver cut, the Sierra cut, several different cuts that came out of that shoulder. My research actually even looked at the sirloin and was sponsored by the Idaho Beef Council, or the sirloin, I think I said that. Anyway, so we looked at the sirloin and found new ways to innovatively market the sirloin. And so some of the things I notice at these butcher shops that have been in business for a long time is that they have a hard time finding resources that tells them exactly how to cut those innovative new cuts. And they'll have a customer that comes in and says, hey, I'd like flat irons, or what's the Delmonico, and how can I get that? And some of these old school butchers, they, whether they say, that's not really the fastest way for us to merchandise our beef is to run it across a bandsaw, and you can get your traditional cuts, your T-bones and your porterhouses and your ribeye steaks, but we don't do a lot of boneless cuts, and so we can't get that for you. Or they say that, well, let me do some Googling, let me try to find that cut. And there's not a lot that you can find. You can find a fast video on YouTube or maybe read about it in a book of like, okay, this is how I find that muscle. But actually training butchers hands-on of, here's where this muscle's at. Find that seam. This is where this cut sits. And if you run it across the bandsaw, you might accidentally cut it in half, or you're putting a muscle into trim that actually is super valuable, that the internet just can't teach hands-on meat science the way that somebody else might be able to. And so butchers want to serve their customers, and they want to know, how do I find these new innovative cuts that academia is finding and proving have really great water holding capacity, so a customer is going to have a juicy eating experience, and this muscle's really tender. It's great that academia is finding it. But there's then this disconnect between those small butchers that aren't maybe as apt as like the large meat packing plants that say, yep, we've got 100 people on the line and we're going to figure out this cut and then we're going to sell it really fast. Those small butchers, they cut it the exact same way. It makes sense for them. It's quick for them. And so the innovative cuts are getting lost along the way. And then by chance, then they're missing out on money, both for their shop and for the livestock producer, and then value for the customer who actually wants to pay a premium for that innovative cut.
Well, and just for that producer to be able to offer these different high-end cuts is so important, because it's not cheap to be in that direct-to-consumer model. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of outreach and just keeping those consumers, because we all know, and with your family being involved with that direct-to-consumer model, hamburger usually is the hardest thing to get rid of sometimes. There's always hamburger left over. So when you can diversify more of those cuts from just the traditional steaks and roasts, I think that's so important. I guess, how important is it, maybe on that note too, to work to try to find buyers for hamburger as well? I know we're talking about the butchering side of things, but in your experience working with your family, how vital is it to move that hamburger portion of the beef?
That's interesting. Yeah. Actually, I've got some customers who want a completely fed beef cattle completely put into ground beef. And that kind of hurts my heart a little bit. And maybe that's the difference. I know. It's like, can I sway you to keep the ribeye? and I mean, even as a butcher, so I currently at the processing facility that is closest to me in Livingston. It's a nonprofit meat processing facility, and they take in beef cattle, pork, or lamb as a donation, and then the
you can give Matt you can give Matt a commercial. You can say producer partnership.
Trying to make this universal for the whole country. Yeah, some of those the producers will bring in, what they think is an old boner cattle, and they're just going to get a tax write-off. And we actually, we start, working up the meat, and those animals actually have nice ribeyes. And it's like, oh man, can we sway you from keeping this all ground beef? And yeah, ground beef is certainly difficult to move at some point. Customers, they just want more grillable items, no matter what part of the country that you're in. And so, yeah, some butchers and some, direct to consumer folks might be listening and say, ground beef's hard to move, or maybe it's not ground beef, maybe it's the roasts. Some people have a lot of hard times moving those roasts. And so let's find ways of what if you added a marinade to your product, or what if we stopped grinding up the hanging tender and your skirt steaks, because those are super valuable. We at the University of Idaho, we'd done a cutting demo with one of their local butchers, and we were showing them a new way to cut the sirloin. And what that butcher was concerned about, they said, well, that's not what my customer recognizes. It's great, and this might be, the new thing to do, but my customer's not going to recognize that product. Well, that's possible. But have we had a customer event where you set up some grills outside and, say, it's like, hey, we're going to try out this new cut, and come in and let's have a community barbecue with your butcher. And we'd like, to show you what this product looks like. We're going to grill it up for you. Or, whether it's, let's try some ossobuco, which is the shank, or a merlot steak that comes out of the other shank. And let's, grill up that merlot steak that comes from the hind quarter. Let's slow roast some ossobuco, which is slices out of the front shank. And let's have some demo there and actually let these customers try it and see it. And then they'd probably be more apt to buy it once they recognize it. So yes, there are ways to merchandise product, and then there are ways to show customers product. And it's going to take a little bit of time, but at the end of the day, if that then moves a product for you, taking one day to grill up some steaks, or fire up your Instagram and take some pictures of product, and do a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live of you and your family like enjoying and talking through a meat product. And there's just some ways to promote some of these innovative cuts. That way you have less ground beef, you have fewer roasts, fewer cuts just going to waste.
So, Sierra, what does it look like when you come in and work with these butcher shops, or with new employees or people that have been in the trade for some time? I guess walk us through that. What the trainings look like, and how many hours, how many days? Just because I know we have audience members right now that are probably like, you know what, we could really benefit from this right now.
Sure. And so I kind of think of Butcher Solutions as having 3 different buckets that a person can choose from. The first bucket is that traveling butcher school. And so I would work with an actual meat processing facility and say, what is the main root of what you'd like to fix, or improve upon, whether that's we need to get faster. Maybe that is that we need to get faster. We're doing great on the kill floor, but we're hitting a bottleneck, and we just need to find a way to move faster with the people we have. Or it's, we are having a hard time moving ground beef, moving roasts, moving something. We want to learn a different way to cut this. It's like, great, let's identify a route, and then let's spend a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, whatever you need to get your folks tuned in and comfortable. We'd mentioned the producer partnership earlier. Again, a nonprofit meats packing plant here in Montana. They had one man working there right when it opened, and he said, it can't be a one-man show. And so I came in and I trained a crew of 8, and now they're up and running, everything from the kill side all the way up through packaged out the door. And so maybe it is that brand new facility saying, I need to learn everything. So we'll identify a route of what they need, and then let's figure out how much time it'll take. And we can train them on everything from harvest, fabrication, further processing, value added, marketing. Let's evaluate your cut sheet and find different ways to cut products. Cut out something that's not moving and replace it with something that might sell a little bit better. So that's the first bucket, is truly that traveling butcher school. Tell me what you're struggling with, and we'll find a solution for it. Bucket number 2 would be meat science education. So yes, I did teach at the University of Wyoming for 4 years. I love developing curriculum, developing community workshops, whether that's it's a community college or a trade school or a high school that says that we've got some funding that, or the need to add some meat science curriculum to an FFA program, or consumer science, whatever it might be. I can help build curriculum for those folks to teach meat science, either in a traditional educational outlet or a non-traditional being a hunter education course, a veterans assistance program. There are many people out there who are, looking to, work up their own wild game because their game processors are always swamped, and they want to, become a hunter and know more about, other than just a 4-quarter steak and a hind quarter roast. Can I do more with the meat that I garner from hunting? So I can come in and do a hunter education course, work with veterans who are struggling to find a job after getting out of the service, and get them training that they need to then go out and find a job at a meat processing facility. 4-H FFA programs, can't say enough great things about that youth involvement and getting people excited about meat science early. So I can help put together curriculum for your meat judging programs and help you find a coach, so those students have some leadership in your own community. That would be the second bucket, would be meat science education. And then that third bucket would be industry consultation. And so perhaps you are a person who already works in the industry. So I'm working with the USDA right now to help get a new beef camera or new beef grading camera certified that would actually be used in small and mid-sized meat processing facilities that could actually be certified and could grade your cattle as prime choice select. I've worked with a couple facilities that want to be big packing facilities, and they're not sure how many people it's going to take to actually break down 500 carcasses a day. And once they get the facility built, how do they train 500 people rather than 2 or 3? And so I can help consult on some of those grant writing questions too. So Butcher Solutions can be a lot of things. It can be the true blue walk into the meat lab with your team and help train you hands-on, which is my favorite part. It could be the meat science education piece, and then it could also just be as a consultant. If you've got some questions, hopefully I've got an answer, and if I don't, I can help find the person who has an even better answer than I do. And sometimes that's what we need as livestock producers. The more in depth that I get into meat science, the more even that I forget about how involved those livestock producers have to be. And so, it's easy to imagine on the livestock side, it's very, very easy to get sucked into raising those cattle, those pigs, those sheep every single day, and forgetting about how can I make that end meat product even better. So I've even gotten to go to some livestock producers and give them presentations in their own homes and answer some of their questions about the cattle that they're feeding, about how they might be able to incorporate some new genetics or beef on dairy into their herds. And, just let's improve the entire meat product from start to finish in any way that we can. And so I hope to be just one small cog in that bigger machine.
That was I'm glad you brought up just working with producers on just maybe their genetics or trying to improve the calves that they're raising, because how important is it for producers to maybe follow their calves through the supply chain? There's so many cow-calf producers, especially up here in Montana, that they're just like, what, we're cow-calf guys, and we raise good calves and we sell them, and then we think about the next calf crop. But how important is it to maybe look at what those cuts are grading at, and why, maybe somebody's coming back year after year to buy those steer calves from you? And I guess, how important is it to continue that aspect of education for yourself, no matter if you're first generation rancher or sixth generation Montana rancher, wherever you're listening in from today, but just to follow that and look at the quality of meat that your cattle are producing at the end of the supply chain?
It is incredibly important. And, something that even my family doesn't, they've got a meat scientist in their family, and we probably don't even do it as well as we need to be. What we forget as livestock producers is that beef cattle need to be genetically dispositioned to marble. They need to have the genetic ability to put on marbling. And it's not all about the feeding. And so, yes, we could have the feeding aspect down, nailed to a science. But if the genetics aren't there to put in the marbling, then we're just putting on back fat. And so if we don't take the time to go to our processor and say, hey, I'm going to bring you 5 cattle this week, and they're each out of a different lot, and I know at least the genetic makeup of just maybe those 5. Maybe you don't know the whole lot, but you know that they, lot 1 has similar genetics in this aspect, and we fed them this ratio. And lot 2, genetics are kind of similar here. And just take a sampling out of each one of those lots, or if there's a one genetic line that you're curious about, or you tried something different with a beef on dairy, or you brought in some Hereford or something different, just take a small sampling and ask your processor if they could just rib 1 or 2 for you, because that is the struggle too, is that these small processors, if you're not on the grid trying to market cattle, it's not really worth it trying to get those premiums if you're just taking in a handful. And the small meat processors probably aren't ribbing everything. They just don't have space to. But if you ask them if they could just take a cross section of that ribeye, so you could look at the size of the ribeye, you can look at back fat, you could look at marbling, and then take some notes. Is there a lot? Is there a little? Do you think it'd be a prime, or is it more of a select? You don't even have to be an expert there. Is it too fat? Is it ribeye too small? Whatever it is, just take a look at a small sampling, because the genetics of your beef cattle plays 50% of the role. The other 50% comes into that feeding. But if you're not having that genetic aspect there, you're probably just feeding cattle to, maybe too much, maybe too little, but you're finishing them out, and maybe you're just wasting money and not actually adding that high value marbling component. Likewise, if maybe marbling's not your goal, maybe your customer base is looking for a leaner meat product. Because even some of our customers, they come back to us and they say, last year's great meat was great. It was fantastic. This year it was too fat. What does that mean to the customer when they say that it's too fat? Does that mean that there was too much back fat? Maybe our butcher could have trimmed it a little bit better. Maybe we as the farmer and the rancher, maybe we overfed it. Or does it mean that there was a lot of marbling in there and that cow, that steer actually graded prime, but that customer wanted a select or a leaner product? And so if your customer is coming to you and saying, it was okay, but it was too fat, that might not be a you problem. That might be, let's educate our customer on how wonderful marbling is. And so if you never step foot inside that cooler and actually see what your cattle are looking like and know what does it's too fat or it's too lean, what does that actually mean? We don't know if that's a genetic issue or a feeding issue on the farmer side. We don't know if that is a trimming or a cutting issue on the butcher side, or if that is a lack of education on our consumer side, and we need to have a conversation about marbling.
And obviously, education is key just to be successful and to have longevity within our operations, I believe, for years to come. But obviously, there's going to be a lot of education that needs to take place with producers in terms of talking with consumers about real beef, and then obviously this lab-grown goop, as NCBA President Todd Wilkinson terms it, as goop. I call it PDPs, Petri dish protein. How important is it, though, for producers and butchers and consumers to really be able to talk about real beef protein, especially when the government gives the thumbs up for lab-grown imitation beef to be marketed? Only chicken as of the fall of 2023. Two products that are chicken protein-based are going to be on the marketplace. But how important is it on that aspect of education and having your facts and having a connection with consumers?
I don't think it's any secret that it's extremely important. And finding a way that you are comfortable to talking to that audience is what's most important, because everybody's message doesn't have to be the same. If you're not comfortable or you don't feel comfortable sharing all of the numbers about why feeding cattle in a confined operation is, great for some customers and why others might, prefer a completely grass finished product. If you don't completely feel comfortable with representing the feedlot industry, then that's fine. And if you don't completely have all the facts between the environment and how do I represent what my family does every single day to promote sustainability and why we care about the land and why farming and ranching really is a sustainable crop. If you're not comfortable with that, then that's okay. Find the message that you do feel comfortable with, and then have a couple backup resources of, I don't know about that, but this website really helped educate me. And I know there's some good numbers on there that you might check out. For me personally, so I am an athlete. I like to run a lot. And so I joined Team Beef, which is a great program that NCBA sponsors in certain states, and certain states have programs. And so Team Beef is basically an athlete program where they sponsor several athletes in that state to go out, and we'll pay your registration to go and run this event or bike this event or do a trail run or a marathon. And while you are competing in an athletic event, how many people do you talk to about lean beef protein and incorporating animal proteins in their diet? And we get to wear these really bright red jerseys that say Team Beef on them and fueled by beef and all this great stuff. And I love talking to athletes about how they choose to fuel their bodies and the nutrition that they choose to use to power their athletic endeavors. And whether somebody comes up to me and says like, hey, like love beef, eat it every day, like great, like love to see here, or they say, I've heard some things about about red meat protein, and I've chosen not to include it so much. Like, what is team beef? Like, why are you here? You have some really genuine conversations with folks about protein and athletics, and so that's how I choose to promote my side of the industry. And they're excited to hear it's like, I'm a butcher and a meat scientist, and meat science sounds scary, but it's not. And so that's the avenue I've chosen. Some producers might have kiddos who are great at Instagram and Facebook, and so use your kids phone addiction to have them take pictures and videos and show people what you're doing every day. Maybe you've got a wife or a husband or a brother, somebody who's on the school board, and you can donate some beef every year, or do a small presentation to a school or to your church. Like there are a lot of ways that we can educate our traditional community and help answer some questions, but we don't have to be the experts on every single topic, because our customers and our consumers have a lot of questions and they go deep. And so find the topic that you feel comfortable with, find a way to answer those questions really well, and then have some people in your back pocket or some resources that you can direct people to. And you don't just know that you don't have to have the answer to every single thing that our customers have.
Well, thanks for going over that and sharing your perspective and your personal experience on that. And I do want to get back to talking about Butcher Solutions, because obviously it can provide so much more information and real experiential hands-on learning for these butcher shops, small, medium, or large, whatever they may be. And a question I do have as a part of that curriculum, Sierra, do you work with butchers to identify like, hey, you should be USDA certified to be able to push this product across state lines if a producer wants to, or saying, your niche is this local community? I guess what's that dialogue like, and is that a part of the curriculum as well?
Yeah, great question. I actually had a gentleman reach out from Iowa, and he was interested in applying for a USDA grant, and he wanted to get a little bit more funding so he could put in a new smokehouse and some new equipment. And I looked into the grant a little bit for him, and it required him to be state inspected or federally inspected to qualify for that grant money. And so we did have a conversation then about, have you ever considered being more than custom exempt? And he said, yes, I had, but it just seemed like a lot of paperwork. And, I've kind of waffled with it, but I guess if I would be, able to get more grant money if I were state inspected, then that might be the way to go. And, I have a lot of confidence in state and federal inspection, just, from an animal welfare standpoint, and, having somebody there to monitor every step of your process, and then to also, serve as some insurance policy that your workers are taking every step to ensure that that product is, free of fecal milk ingesta, and that it's cut in a way that is wholesome, that those animals are handled humanely. I love those inspection programs, and they really do a great job. But you're right, in some parts of the country, custom exempt is the way to go. And if you are serving the need for hunters to bring in wild game, and you're serving the need for livestock producers to quickly be able to market to their customers, it might not be necessary for you to have state inspected or federally inspected. And so, I can certainly just help with some of those conversations and just kind of be a sounding board for folks who have questions. And then again, I probably don't have all of the answers, but I've got some resource and connections to folks who do, especially like down the grant road, those federal and state grants, and money is out there, but it is tricky to obtain. And so I've got some folks who could help walk through that process, and answer some of those questions, and then maybe help find a little bit extra funding, or help your business find a different avenue, or just be a bigger component of the avenue that you're already in.
Now, Sarah, I also am reading here that you're a finalist for the Butchers of America Young Butcher Contest. What is this? And I guess how does the contest, how do people vote on that, I guess?
Great question. Yeah, I just competed this past week in Sacramento, California, and so and I did make the Team USA for the Butcher Olympics, basically, which is amazing. Um, so yeah, the World Butcher Challenge takes place biannually. So this past year it was held in Sacramento, California, and in 2025 it's going to be held in Paris, France. And so teams from all over the world submit one young butcher, which is under 30. That's the division I applied for and actually am on that team, which is amazing. And then they have a senior division, which is a team of 6. And these are folks, so each country can submit a team if they so choose. And so Team USA is our representative for or I guess they're called Butchers of America, and that's Team USA in the Butcher Olympics. But we'll compete against Germany, France, Italy, New Zealand, Australia, all different countries, and you basically you have 2.5 hours to break down a beef carcass, a pork carcass, and a lamb carcass, and display innovative cuts, traditional cuts. You will be graded on your butchery skills, your creativity, your cleanliness, your safety as butchers, and you get to represent the trade. So it's a really amazing opportunity to showcase what butchers do all over the world. And so the competition I just competed for last weekend was evaluating. There were 40 different applicants, and then there were 16 of us who qualified to actually go and compete. And so there was a farm to fork festival in downtown Sacramento, which was a great stage to demonstrate butchery skills for folks in California and bring in a wide audience to watch this butchers competition and see who was going to make the Butchers of America Team USA. And so we got to have some fun conversations with folks who lived in inner city California about what butchers do. And I actually got to MC one of the competitions. So I got to take a lot of questions about beef and pork and lamb and answer what butchers do and how these folks can have better conversations with their butchers. So aside from just for the next year, I will practice and work with the team, and we'll decide who's actually going to Paris to compete on the formal team, and who will represent Team USA in that Butchers Challenge. But more than that, I take it as a year for me to learn from these other really skilled butchers. Again, since I own a traveling butcher school, I get to learn from butchers from all over the country then, and so implement some really cool things then in the people that I'm training. I get to learn from these cool butchers and then take it to these smaller butcher shops and teach them some new things. And overall, then we get to promote how fun and interesting and unique it is to be a butcher. And I'd really like to get some more young people engaged in this industry. And so showing them that there's a Butcher Olympics out there, and that working on cold, wet concrete with meat is, different, but maybe just as exciting as working with the cattle every day or working in a restaurant as a chef. And so we need to get more young people excited, or folks that are retired but want a change of career. Butchery is a wonderful one, and so it's really neat to promote the butchery industry in such a unique platform. So if you're curious, you can check out butchersofamerica.org, and then you can also check out the World Butcher Challenge. They both have Instagram pages. They both have websites, so check it out. You can even watch the full competitions on YouTube. So check them out. I'm excited to have made the team and get to spend a year cutting meat.
Well, that's cool. I'm gonna definitely have to check those out on YouTube. I love watching meat cutting videos. I watch the bearded butchers on Instagram.
Oh yeah, they're great.
I'm just watching all these different cuts and what they do. So I love watching those meat cutting demonstrations and videos, and so I'm definitely going to check those out. So good luck over the next year, and hopefully you'll be over there in Paris and on that and representing USA, the Team USA over there really well, flying into Charles de Gaulle and having the Eiffel Tower in the background there. That would be cool if that's where you actually did the competition right at the base of the Eiffel Tower or on the Eiffel Tower.
I
Hey,
think the contest is actually held in some of the stadiums where they're building the current, facility for the Olympics. So
mhm,
we say that the Summer Olympics is just a
a
warm up
warm
for
up.
the Butcher Olympics.
Hey, so Sierra, obviously we've talked, we've had a diverse conversation here today, which I've really enjoyed. And obviously, for our friends that are interested with Butcher Solutions, I'll let you share that information on how they can get in touch with you. But what is your long term goal and for Butcher Solutions, and where do you see the three tranches or the three buckets that you have for education going in for a long term goal for this important aspect of livestock and food production?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a young butcher myself, so 29 years old, just finished grad school, and this business is less than a year old. It started December of 2022, so it's coming up on a year. And so within this first year here, again, I'm kind of a bootstrap entrepreneur. So as I get jobs, those then pay for my travel to attend another job, and so it's kind of snowballing right now. But the vision is to have regional butchers all over the country, so that myself can be based somewhere and can help line up some of these projects. And then I'll be able to have regional butchers with a diverse multitude of specializations all over the country. I'll be able to have somebody in the Pacific Northwest, somebody in the Southeast, somebody in the Midwest, and maybe I'll have, and being connected with the academia, I've had an opportunity to meet a lot of folks who have a wide range of skills within the meat science industry. Whether those butchers or academics are focused on humane slaughter, or they know a multitude of different ways to more or less skin a cat. And there's not one way to harvest, and we can do this in a several different ways. Or maybe those folks are really skilled in processed meats, which is something that is not my passion. Processed meats is a whole nother side of the meat science industry. I'm more of a cut it and weigh it meat scientist, and processed meats requires a lot of meat math and calculation, and how do we make better processed meats. Perhaps somebody has a staff or a meats crew that is completely fluent in Spanish, and they need somebody there to teach them in Spanish. I've got a connection up in Oregon, and she's already agreed to be one of our regional butchers. So this industry is far and wide, and so I want to have regional butchers that are also spread far and wide across the country to help keep those travel costs down for the livestock producer or the processor who's paying to have us come in. If I can have them a little bit closer to home, that cuts down on the travel costs that person has to pay to have us come in. And then also having these regional butchers with a wide breadth of experience. Again, I'm a young butcher myself, and so you don't need to have a master's degree in meat science, but it certainly helps. But I don't know everything about this industry quite yet, or ever will. And so having more regional butchers who can specialize, and I can fall back on to answer some of these really in-depth questions and get the best answer, or find the best solution, is my goal. And so it's going to be a really fun ride over the next, hopefully 50, 70 years that I get to run this business. But we'll see where it goes, but it's brand new right now. And, I'd love if some livestock producers out there, and meat processors, help me grow. Let's start to get connected, and, maybe it's not this year, but in future years, let's find a way to build some better butchers all across the country together.
And where can folks go to learn more about Butcher Solutions?
Yep. So the website is butchersolutionsllc.com. You can also reach out to me on email, which is just butchersolutions@outlook.com. The website has all of my contact information. My phone number is on there. Feel free, just give me a call. And I mean, let's chat about what your community needs, what you might need. Just answer some questions, and yeah, it's gonna be fun. So butchersolutionsllc.com. Find me on Instagram. It'll be great.
Well, again, Sierra, thanks for taking time here today to talk about Butcher Solutions, your background in meat science, and also representing cattlemen and women and beef producers there on Team Beef and also on Team USA there as well. So I've enjoyed our conversation, and I hope folks do check out your website and Instagram and get in touch with you to help streamline and improve their operations back at home.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us here today for another conversation on the Cattleman's Call podcast. I'm Lane Nordlund. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with Lane Nordlund. For more information, visit ncba.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast today.